The picture that I'm trying to get across for 2024, which is recovering economy, falling inflation, is really what is known as macro summer and crypto summer. That is the holy grail. That is the one where you start to make the real money. And that's coming, and we're very close to it.
In this interview with Real Vision CEO Raoul Pal, he discusses the market cyclicality that many people attribute to the Bitcoin halving and its effect on the market. Raoul Everything Theory is formed on the back of technical analysis for why the cycle actually exists.
Interesting.
He explains that it has little to do with the Bitcoin halving and more to do with a global liquidity trend that we see as a result of the 2008 financial crisis that coincidentally created Bitcoin. He explains that the halvings and election years align with this cycle but do not cause it. He moves on from there to talk about the two top projects he's looking at for the next cycle and why a Bitcoin ETF will be extremely beneficial for ETH.
So this is the big picture view. 2008, some magic happened. The magic was the debt jubilee. The debt jubilee was when the world blew up, when every major economy started to get to 100% of GDP in debt at government level, ignoring the private sector level. Basically, there's not enough GDP to pay for all of the interest payments on the debt. And what they did was this debt jubilee, which was like, you don't need to pay your interest. It's now zero, right? Everybody got given that gift in 2008, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So that whole period, everybody reset all of their debt to a 3 to 5 year debt cycle. And that funding cycle is now the thing that drives everything.
The zero interest rates caused a massive increase in liquidity, but unfortunately also created a vicious cycle of ups and downs caused by uncontrollable debt maturing. Mark explains that this is the actual cause of the 4-year macro cycle that's often attributed to the Bitcoin halving. Not to discredit the halving, as it also plays a significant role, as explained by Michael Saylor. Saylor explains that when mining rewards drop in half, Bitcoin price has to double so miners can maintain the same level of profits as before. And while Bitcoin prices haven't always doubled, they've always gone up significantly after a halving. However, the big picture is that the centerpiece is liquidity, not the halving. Raoul pivots now and talks about the coins he's watching for this next cycle and how he thinks a Bitcoin ETF will affect ETH.
Crypto spring is like spring in the macro economy. Generally, it's a bonds driven. In the credit markets will be treasury bonds. And in crypto, it's Bitcoin. So Bitcoin always outperforms at this point. And then what happens as you start to get into late spring, which is where I think we are now, where we transition towards summer, is you start to see the alts rising. And then we'll see, and we're right at the bottom of that massive ETH Bitcoin wedge, and we're getting all the demark signals and all of the things that we should be getting that should start leading to the ETH outperformance, which I think will happen, but just because of the network effects of ETH, because of how it's constructed versus Bitcoin. So everyone's peak Bitcoin versus ETH right now, but then there's the magic of the ETF, and people are so predictable. So right now, everyone's front running the Bitcoin ETF. And exactly as you say, Ovi, the next thing that's going to happen, the moment that that is out, it'll be, fuck, the ETH ETF is coming.
Yep.
And all of that capital that was front running that will just be washed into the ETH trade, which will hypercharge that wedge and kicks off towards the summer. Imran, the option guy from the UK who was on Real Vision yesterday, what he's seeing is really interesting in the option market is Bitcoin options kind of open interest collapsed into this, but what we're seeing is the rise of call buying in ETH as the kind of hedge fund money and others are starting to think through exactly this phasing, and they're all starting to buy calls on ETH. So what we should see, I like to see those things too. You guys all know it, when the market is like looking to go higher and there's a massive call seller out there, it just forces this massive short covering of those positions or the covering of their delta, and it explodes through in price, which is actually what happened in Bitcoin. There was a bunch of calls out there that were short as well. So yeah, it's setting itself up perfectly for ETH poking everybody in the eye to say, don't forget about me.
Raoul has provided technical analysis on why ETH is bound to explode in price, but he also touched on how a Bitcoin ETF will affect ETH and why he's bullish on ETH in general. He mentions that a Bitcoin ETF approval is more likely to drive the price of ETH up, simply because ETH is next in line. Next, he highlights his next choice and explains the tech behind it and why he's excited about it.
I had a very small position, that $180 position. That was a FOMO position at the time. But really, I started buying in June and October last year. And the reason being is I started looking a lot at the ratios between Salana and ETH, the Salana chart itself. And I started thinking, okay, this is actually interesting. This looks to me like we're going to see, I haven't shown the longer term chart, but it's like this wedge pattern. I thought, this looks like this might be the token. And then I see everybody talking about it as the SAM coin, blah, 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 down 97.5%. I'm like, this is Ethereum from the previous cycle. And so I've been watching it and watching it. I added and added. And then I've been looking at these longer term charts thinking, what is the story I'm missing? And look, I saw the compressed NFTs. I think that's a very, very big deal. It's all about, ticketing and all of those use cases. You can see, it's a good, fast chain, lots of community, lots of builders. So it's like, okay, this is great. They're good, high quality people. Tolly is one of the best people in the entire space, I think. But really, I was at Mainnet in New York a few weeks ago, and I heard Colleen Sullivan from Brevin Howard is a friend of mine talking about Fire Dancer. Just dropped into the conversation when she was on stage. I'm like, don't know what that is. I ignored it because she knows a lot more than me, so I just assumed it was something wonky. And then Tolly was on stage talking about Fire Dancer, and he dropped the thing, oh yeah, Jump Trading have been building this validator, and it's working out at somewhere between 600,000 and 1.2 million TPS. So I went down the Fire Dancer rabbit hole, and I'm like, oh, okay. What is being built is like the new Salana. I asked Tolly about it publicly on Twitter. When's this coming? It's like, we think it's going to get on testnet by year end, mainnet by the summer. And it's like a total step change of anything that's ever happened in the space in terms of transaction speed and cost. And it increases the security of the Salana SVM. So this is really, really a big deal. When I saw that, I'm like, this is it. I know this. I know that this can build not only narrative, but actually some other use cases.
The buzz around Fire Dancer and Solana's Breakpoint event is partially responsible for the recent skyrocket in price. As Raoul predicted, a narrative is forming around Salana, and it's only possible because Salana is building tech around the narrative. Collaborations with established brands like Visa only help feed this narrative, and overall will cause a massive increase in liquidity on the Salana chain. In conclusion, the future is bright for Salana and ETH, especially over very long time horizons. But exactly how it'll play out remains to be seen. What do you think about Raoul's predictions? To see the latest in crypto news, watch this video here.